get an extra chair in there for, oh, Ms. Rattlesnake's got a chair. Good job. Good job. Well, this whole adventure is an object lesson in entrepreneurship. We were scheduled to meet with Ms. Sharron Proulx-Turner on Thursday. And of course, due to weather, that didn't work out. And Ms. Montour, Ms. Cryer, and I were on the phone till past midnight, as we were with Ms. Proulx-Turner, who incidentally offered to take the Red Arrow bus, because nothing else was working, from Calgary to Red Deer if we could get down and get her to Red Deer so we could make it happen on Thursday. But things got worse, not better, weather-wise, as we all know. And so in consultation with Classroom Connections in Toronto, Ms. Heather McTaggart and others, and with Ms. Montour and Ms. Cryer, we were on the phone, and we said, what are we going to do here? Because the members of Change It Up have worked their tails off this week, and where's the payoff? I mean, they're never going to get to meet the person who's been writing all this? And I said, the lesson in this, and that's why I call it an object lesson, is that we deliver the goods. Rain, sleet, or snow, the mail must go through. And we felt that that was important to communicate to you as members of Change It Up, that the number one lesson we can learn in business is to deliver the goods. You know, there used to be...
Meet the goods.
Well, so that brings us up to the goods, to Ms. Sharron Proulx-Turner. You actually know all of her without knowing her, because you were reading her intensely all last week, one time after another. But of course, she doesn't yet know you, but she will, thanks to what you wrote last week. Now, that's part of the introduction. I think there's more that I should introduce Ms. Proulx-Turner, because I think you need to know a little about the members of Change It Up. When they tell you their name, make sure you remember it. I'll give you an example. Last week, somebody told me their name, and I didn't get it quite right. And so that night, I got an email referring to me as Mr. Cornett. And telling me, maybe now you'll remember my name. And we also, as you might well surmise, we have a trickmaster. We have a trickster in our midst. Well, not who actually convinced me, and they're all witnesses to this, this trickster convinced me that they are the mayor of Cut Knife, Saskatchewan. And I took it hook, line, and sinker. So I want you to, you know, since we're in entrepreneurship, let's see if you folks know one of the basic expressions in business and in entrepreneurship. Does anybody know what that expression, caveat emptor, means? It is Latin. You got it, Mr. Little Poplar. It means buyer beware. And it's a disclaimer. Many businesses will have a disclaimer. I happen to be reading in the hotel room, if there's a fire, don't take anything with you, run out of the room and bring your key. And right next to it is a phrase, it is a legal conditions, we are responsible for nothing that's lost in the fire. That's a disclaimer. So we got to watch the legalese language here, but that's a legal expression. Buyer beware. So I want you.
I'm not for sale.
But I want you to beware. Who knows what could happen? You know, you could be sucked in like I was.
Knife cut Saskatchewan.
When you were naked in the hotel room, you gotta grab something.
Yeah, see? Now, folks, all last week, we were very intensive. Really, we morphed into a creative writing workshop with the members of Change It Up. And they were never told who would come to talk with them. They were never told the name of the author. They were never told the name of the book. And here's the book. The trees are still bending south. And they were never told the title of the poems. What I did instead, Miss Proulx-Turner, is I would take a piece of writing, and I took it from the beginning, middle, and end, and I would cut it out. I would photocopy it with Ms. Pryor, and then I would cut it out, and then they would be handed this. They would be handed one of the poems. There is no page, no title, no name of author. There is nothing. The words had to stand or fall on their own merit. And then, like new kids on the block, we went step by step through your poetry. And I'll give you an example. We'll start out, and for the first time ever, they're going to hear the poems read out loud by the poet. So, maybe we can begin with, and did you have your own copy with you? No. So you don't mind reading from this one? Okay. Yeah.
Just making sure it's not from the library.
So, if you would read in a strong, projected voice this poem, of which they don't even know the title. Ooh la la. Markers. Gotta be careful because I've got a lot of markers. And see if you remember it, folks, as she reads it out loud.
Before I read it out loud, I just want to thank all of you for being here and for writing me and telling me my favorite writing me. And thank the people for caring so generously and carefully for the land and for accepting outsiders in my life. I know without the generosity of you, I'm non-status Mohawk from Yamasatani in Quebec, and also Haiti. So I have lots of information and my mom was fostered out when she was a kid into an Irish community in the Ottawa Valley of Ontario, and so that's how I grew up with an Irish dad and kind of a really displaced native Haitian. So now I'm just it's called Looking Down Through the Window of a Plane. I have a dream where I wake up laughing. Then I dream I'm able to walk on top of great lake waters. Open my eyes to the stillness of snow lingering around the trunks of trees and inside rocks so far below. Grandmother moon full still, her silver light swelling with the wind. Her circular songs rewriting the sky as morning red pours out through her throat and water words. Their lines unwinding. For each person's life is as sacred as a woman who sits at the foot of a tree, peering down through that sky. Childhood longings, broad strokes of red painted onto black scratches and real world of color. down through the pane window, I hear the keys of a piano, fingering those tips of the ears of the head. Then small scribbles of snow, the sun's reflection, like a syllabic language printing on the ground, defining the good lines imposed around the palm of the hand, where the beam on the ice sends messages scattered. More water, more ice, words refracting for the birds to read, and the star people. In the spring light, the snow around the trees accentuates their meanings, full and autumn. And as the plane descends, I know us may too, always like to live by the water. In my bones, I know why, not just for transportation, but
Do you folks remember that one? Well, Ms. Proulx-Turner, when I said it's like New Kids on the Block, step by step, they received your poem on that paper with no reference whatsoever. I asked them, would you please read it once, straight through, and write one word about it? Okay, so they did that, and they were all there at their computers. I said, now would you please read it a second time, straight through, and write a sentence about it. And a sentence is just a verb and a noun. Anything else is up to them. Subsequently, I asked them, would you please read it a third time, straight through, and write a paragraph about that piece of writing. And incidentally, I never called it a poem. I always referred to it as a piece of writing, so that they would interpret it however they wanted. And would you please write a paragraph? A paragraph is 2 sentences or more. Then I asked them, would you please read it a 4th time straight through, and in a stream of consciousness vein, write everything that goes through your mind about that piece of writing. Now, in actual fact, this was the last piece of writing they received. We had been doing this all week, so I figured, well, now's the time for them to try and make a mental picture of who's writing this. And of course, James Joyce wrote a very well-known book. James Joyce, one of the great novelists of the 20th century, called Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. So I asked them, would you please write a portrait of the artist? How do you see the person who's writing this? And I said, whoever wrote this. I didn't even say it was masculine, feminine, one or more people, just whoever wrote this. And I figured, you know what? Poets are about creativity, and that's really what the focus of our week together. It was creativity as an operative principle for entrepreneurship, for business, because that's what makes business happen. And I invited them to make up their own words and to give their own definition of that word. So with your permission, theirs, I'd like to share with you how the members of Change It Up engaged you without ever meeting you, but through your words. So here we go. What's that? Yeah. What did you say, Mr. Miller?
It's free word for uh-oh.
I couldn't agree more.
And Rajit, feel free to move up for the sound, whatever will help. Well, here's one of the members of Change It Up. Now, incidentally, I'm very jealous of their names. May I introduce you to Ms. Rattlesnake? And Mr. Yellowbird, Ms. Northwest, and Ms. Saddleback, and Mr. Little Poplar, and I said, what am I doing with such a dull name like Cornett?
Well, you could change it to Cornett.
So since it was a matter of getting our bearings, and there was somebody in the seminar named Ms. Northwest, I said, would you please call me from now on South by Southwest? And I invited the members of the seminar, as I've just told you. Well, here's one of the people, and I'm going to give you a sense because you're a craftsperson of words. You're a wordsmith. Well, here's one of the words that a seminar member made up after reading your poem. And I'll write it for you. Because business is about coming up with your own ideas. So they invented, their word invention was to morning, and this means tomorrow in the morning. Because we want to encourage them in their businesses, in their entrepreneurship, to think new thoughts, to come up with new ideas and new ways of expressing them, of getting them across. And that's why I felt it was important to invite you, because that's really your specialty, your expertise. How to express oneself, how to get the ideas across, and how to have an impact. Well, here's another member of Change It Up on the same poem. And here they wrote in a stream of consciousness, in dialogue with you, not having yet met you. This piece is saying to me that the writer is coming home after a long while. How he dreams of laughter and the innocence of childhood. The time in his life that has long since gone. I too am brought to my own childhood, and how, when we moved away from grandmother, I couldn't wait to see her. I couldn't wait to play in the bushes with my uncles. We were all innocent and free. Everything seemed to shine each morning. Watching my kokum cooking up a storm for the two of us, and then secretly telling me to get ready so we could go to town. Good times, just her and I. I was her baby, and I miss her every day. She was the one I ran to tell everything. Everything good that happened in my life. She was the one I needed to tell. I no longer have anyone to share the pride in my children and grandchildren. No one to tell how happy, sad, or confused I am. She was the only one that truly loved me. And I long to be just like her. I learned everything I know from her. She was my greatest mentor. And I hope one day that one of my grandchildren feels like that about me. For the greatest thing on earth that I can become is to be just as wonderful as my Coco. I love you, Coco. This is where my thoughts are right now. Whether it makes sense or not, my Coco is home to me. So we invite you to riff on that, Ms. Proulx-Turner. We'll open it up.
Aww. I'm a monogamous grandma, and I have 4 grandkids, and the oldest is 15, and he is from my son-in-law, a previous relationship, and then the girl that they had together, was, my girl, I call her number 1. And I have that kind of relationship with her. And it's funny that it almost makes me want to cry, and moves me to tears, because it makes wrote that? Amazing writer.
Unless they identify themselves, it's anonymous. It's up to them to say who wrote it.
You
They're right
it-
there in front of you.
It just really demonstrates the power of writing, you know, to be able to feel all those feelings from somebody else's words. Like when I was listening to that, I felt so much, and how that person was reading what I wrote and then went into her or his own world, and then when I'm listening to their words, I'm going into my own world. And it just kind of demonstrates the power of writing, the power of story, the power of words to, you know how they tell us that words are sacred? It really comes home how words are to reach us emotionally, because it's almost like that emotions are where everything eventually ends up is in emotion. Everything comes out from emotion and goes into emotion.
Thank you.
That was mine.
Maybe I almost cry listening to it.
Yeah. I was just holding back the tears.
Well, the first lesson in this is never underestimate your potential, folks. You know, you have an award-winning writer here who has just said, whoa. Or as the trickster told me the name of Hovima, I didn't know the origins of that word, Hovima. And I learned that this was because somebody came into this territory and their horse was running away, and their horse's name was Bima, and they had to tell him, "Oh, Bima!" This is how I get sucked in. And, you know, just listening now to this dialogue between what you've written and what one of the seminar members wrote, you know, in the Bible, and I'm a religious studies scholar, the Psalms are actually songs. And then later they were put into writing and became poems. And there's one of the Psalms that says, "Deep calls unto deep at the sound of thy waters." And really what's just happened is deep has called unto deep. It's a communion of souls from the depths of their soul. Well, here's another seminar member. It's the same piece of writing, and what we experiment is how we can all read from the same page, and every one of us interpret it differently, and that's where the ideas and the riches and the wealth come from. Is from those, rather than seeing, oh, what's the right interpretation of your poem? Well, my interpretation brings something totally new to it. And to work with my ideas, my perspective, and my words, I'm bringing something new to the table, which is a first principle of business and entrepreneurship. Well, here's another person who invented their own word. I think we're going to have to turn the page. Because I've asked them to be creative, to invent their own words. And, well, where did that black pen go? Oh, thanks very much, Lewis. They invented this word, hacks. Now, we have it on the best authority that hacks means let it go, just relax. And here, now they have no idea who's written these words. I asked them to do a portrait of the artist. Well, here's their portrait. This person is gentle and quiet. She listens to what is being said. Her imagination is unlimited, waiting to pour into the real wasn't ready before now. She sure is at this moment. She works with her hands and is a visual person. Her mother is like her opposite. Her mother is loud and cheerful. Opposites attract. Her father is similar, quiet and gentle. She grew up in a family of 6 kids, she being number 5, so she was pampered. Her parents did everything for her. It wasn't helpful for her to go into the world on her own. She had to deal with what life has thrown at her. Now she has 3 kids, and now has to teach them what she has learned. So what do you think of that?
I wish I had that life. It's kind of neat. Well, I don't know. Okay, I'm from a family that had 7 kids, and I'm number 3. 5 girls, 2 boys. My dad was extremely violent, and so was my mom. And I actually experienced a lot of really, I was tortured by the Canadian government from the age of 2 to 11. And I think that, when I was a kid, I knew this old lady, and she once said to me, she says, I guess she must have kind of known what was happening, and she said to me, when children are asked to sacrifice so much, they're rewarded tenfold. And now in my life, I really believe that it's true. And I think there's a reason why some of us come on this earth to really go through really rough times as children. And even when we don't really make it, but we don't, I don't know the reason, but I know there's a reason. I never started writing or publishing or writing until I was 40.
Wow, that's amazing. Because it's a tough, all of us have got tough roads to hoe, trying to break into the writing business. I'm telling you, I deal with a lot of them. It ain't easy. So this is quite remarkable to break into the business at that age.
But I went to school, like back to school as an adult, and in my early 30s, and I had been in a really violent marriage, and I broke up, got out of the marriage just the same year, like 2 days after I left my husband. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and I know that if it would have happened 2 days earlier, I wouldn't have left, I would have stayed there. But because my mom, she passed away 8 months later, and she was young, she was only 54, and one of the things that she didn't tell me, but she told my sister, that she always wished that one of her kids would go to university. And my grandmother used to tell us, go to school, we need women who are, we are women to be strong and that go to school. And so when after my mom passed, I took 1 course, and then I just went to university. But I went into art, like on the easy road. And then I found out I'm really not a very good artist. But then I failed this Canada English test. I had to write an essay and failed it. So I had to take an English test. When I took this course, I took it from this lady. I don't know if I should say this on film or not. She's from Alberta, this lady. Her name is Aretha Van Herk. She's a famous writer.
Yeah, I've heard of her name, but I don't know.
say that when my daughter was little, she called her Aretha Manager. Because she didn't like kids. And, but I had her as a teacher in my first English class, and she, maybe the second or third class, she made us write an essay. And have you ever seen those booklets that you have to write in school? Like, that's all they give you. You sit there and you just have this booklet on your desk. You gotta write in it, and then they take it, hand it in. So we had to write an essay. And the lady it was a huge class. And she comes back to the class, I don't know, maybe a week or two later, and she has this big pile, because it was like 75 students, big pile of paper, and she slams it on her desk, and she goes, "You bunch of idiots." And she looks around me like that, and she goes, "I don't know how you made it through high school." And I'm thinking, I'm paying for this. So she said only 2 people passed in the whole class. And I get my thing back, and it's got a little recipe card in it with big red writing, and it says, "This is no essay, but you sure as hell can write." That's what it said. That's what it said. And I thought, oh gee, I never thought anyone would ever say anything like that to me. But I never really thought about it because it was hard for me to accept compliments. And plus I didn't know who she was. I had dyslexia. I have some other learning disability, so it never occurred to me in my life, I can't spell. It never occurred to me in my life that I would ever write. But then after I took that course with her, she suggested that I try other courses, and then I just went from there. And I took a creative writing course, a poetry writing class, and I remember the first time in class, and they made us read our poems out loud. I'm like, what? You have to read them out loud? No, I just read poems. And I'm sitting there like this, trying to read what I wrote. I was so nervous. But I think it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. I didn't know it. My auntie, like my writing is really autobiographical. It's about myself a lot of times. You know, sometimes people, they'll tell me stories and they say, "You should write this, you're a writer, aren't you? You should write this story." I'm like, are you kidding? I got enough stories to tell, you know, from my own world, which is, you know, how we're taught that you don't talk about yourself. You know, that's how I was taught. And it keeps you from gossiping. Sometimes you need to talk about yourself. So that's how I ended up. I knew that would happen, but I'm still doing it, and I love it. You know, it's something that I love, and then I guess if you're here as business people, as entrepreneurs, and can I just say something I told someone here earlier? Who's the one who's name?
Oh, Alani Subansu.
Alani Subansu. She's a Mohawk filmmaker, and she's in her 80s, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's been making films since she was a young woman, and she's only made one film about a non-native, and that's about him. And I've seen this film a few years ago, and because I went to the library, you can get like films are in the library, and I watched this film about me, and then suddenly last year I met him, and Professor, I call him Monsieur le Professor, was fired from Yale University. I never told why, ever, to this day. And the suspicion is because it's the way that I teach. I figure it has to be about money. But but, maybe some funders didn't want me to do that's what happened. So, the fact that you're here and you're doing what you're doing now is probably what you're meant to do.
I call this reality-based education. And since we're in dialogue, remember folks, the only wrong question is the unasked question. What would you like to ask Ms. Sharron Proulx-Turner?
I think you gave some hints along the way that it's all, nobody in here, we shouldn't speak for everybody, but from ourselves, nature, nature, that's what it caught my eye. Somewhere that experience this and that, you don't just think of something, it's there, you must have experienced something where it's captured in your mind, or whatever it's there that you remember, just by picking to get the ball rolling.
And I think that what she's bringing up applies directly to what you're doing. We can either see our lived experience as a liability that it's going to drag us down, or we can turn that into an asset through creativity and make the best of it, and actually, by giving voice to what we've lived, we can morph into someone we never dreamed of. And we can do what we did not think possible. So we're faced with this challenge. You know, life is a two-edged sword. Is this a liability or is this an asset? And she's just said how tough it was, but in the end, it made her who she is and the writer that she has become. Well, here's the same piece of writing and another member of the seminar. I also incidentally asked them to do a tweet on each piece of the writing. A tweet about the piece of writing. Well,
Never tweeted.
well, here's another member of the seminar. One word, symbolic. One sentence, using nature in a symbolic context to describe emotions and thoughts. One paragraph, in using nature to describe her thoughts and feelings, she is able to make a visual connection with her readers, to get a grasp of what she is saying. Her metaphors on nature and seasons blend her emotion and depth of what is being told so that it speaks to the reader. Stream of consciousness. The writing makes me feel like I'm having an overhead or bird's eye view of what I'm reading, so I can see what she wrote instead of just reading. I'm actually there, living, breathing this story, which is quite weird and awesome at the same time. Like the feeling of flying or floating above one's conscious thought and getting caught in a vortex of swirling thoughts and emotions that can take you and decipher what the message that is prominent in your mind. Tweet, here's their tweet on your piece of writing. I'm as happy as can be as how I could read this free-flying and creative as my mind is to wonder in self-thought and expression. The title, their title for this piece of writing, Fly When You're Awake. This is the feeling I get from reading it. Although I know this is my own interpretation of the story, it's the name I give to it. My definition, or my portrait of whoever wrote these words, I feel that the people that wrote these words are from the east coast of Canada, are male and female of some Aboriginal descent. I feel that they are an artist
and come from a community where poverty and family dysfunction is a common problem. I feel that they are active in the community and they have a compassion to let the world know their heart's desire and the empathy they feel. How would you respond to that, Ms. Proulx-Turner?
Cool. That's really powerful. Isn't it amazing though how, like stream of consciousness just brings stuff out? It's amazing. There's a lot there. There's a lot to comment on.
Take your choice, and we'll run with it. And you can also challenge the person who wrote it if they want to identify themselves, but that's up to them.
Okay, if you want to identify that. I'm like, why would I want to challenge
I
that?
will.
You did. It's amazing. You know what? And even the depth of what you see, like the depth of your own empathy, like that's what you demonstrate there to me, is the depth of your own empathy. And also the way that you, and I, you know, it's not very many readers actually take the time to, I guess you could say, make a portrait of the author, you know what I mean? And as more than just a photograph or just a name. And you, like, I cannot tell you how bang on you are in your interpretation. So, like, I could just, everything that you wrote, I could just say, and blah, 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 and, you know, each thing that you wrote there. So, just thank you for being such a careful reader.
Well, that's what I took out of it when I read it. The first sentence there, when I read it, that's what it meaning was a bird's eye view of everything you were saying. And just weird that you had titled that view from a window of a plane.
Yes, exactly, because you didn't know that. Hey, I'm looking out the window of a plane, and I was really sitting on the plane, and I had a dream, and I didn't remember the dream, but I woke myself up because I was laughing out loud. Not the thing to do when you're sitting on a plane. And but I grew up in the Ottawa Valley, which is in Ontario. It's a huge river that flows out into the St. Lawrence Seaway. And my family's from all down there, the coast of Quebec there, and then into Ontario up the Ottawa River. And it's where I grew up, the river, the Ottawa River, was so wide that it looks like a lake.
Oh, yeah.
And I did not know that that wasn't just not an ordinary river. So when I moved to Alberta, I'm asking around, so where's the rivers around here? People are like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, there's a stream over there, but I haven't seen no rivers yet. And they're like, oh, that's a river. It's the Bow River. So like really, you couldn't even really see the land. I mean, it was like, it's just like fuzzy and blue stuff. And it's a powerful body of water. And it's forested. So I kind of grew up in the bush. I'd never been in a restaurant until I was 19, you know? And so then, when I moved to Alberta, where I live now in the Calgary area, I live in Calgary, and I'm part Algonquin, which is Blackfoot. The Blackfoots are Algonquin. They migrated in there. And so the land is so different. I can't even imagine how the people migrated there and then made that land their land.
They had no choice.
They could have no choices. They could have went back there. They chose to stay there and become like, we're just shows how resilient our people are. And when I was flying over and I was and looking down like that, because I've been doing a lot of flying since I've been writing, and I never flew before, right? I have this theory that when you're flying,
My name is John.
but I have this theory, you know, when you're flying, you're going real fast, like 500 miles an hour or something. You know how Star Trek would say, you go the speed of time, you never age. So I have this theory that flying is good. But I never knew that I would end up, you know, like flying. It's really
Well, there's a few principles for entrepreneurship that come out here. And he just told you his first name. He didn't tell you his last name. His last name is Saddleback. Make sure you never say Saddlebacks. And two principles here for entrepreneurship. First is, folks, trust yourselves. I've just read two different people in Change It Up, both who have written in a way that has impacted the poet, the author, the writer of these words. And this is all done intuitively. This is done on the spot. They're going with their gut. Folks, trust yourselves. Have confidence in yourselves. Because it works. You're right.
I mean, we're born to trust ourselves, right? Immediately. But then we learn not to. So it's relearning. Boy, I'd trust myself if I was you too.
Have any
I
of
bet
you...
you all the rest of you too.
Well, hopefully we're going to get to... Oh, yeah, pardon me. Good idea.
Can't see Mr. Saddleback.
Any of you ever see a film called Dead Poets Society? Who's seen it? Well, you know at the beginning of the film, The Dead Poets Society, there's this guy who's scared stiff. Now, the actor's name is Ethan Hawke. I love his last name. I wish I had a name like that. And he is so scared. There's an expression that one uses in English, but I won't use it. It begins with S and ends with S. And the teacher tells him, okay, come on up front here, like these game shows, come on down. He has him come on down, and he's scared to death to read his poem. And because of the fear factor, the teacher tells him, just close your eyes and just let it flow out of your mouth. Do you remember that scene? And he's going round and round and he's just speaking. And everybody can't believe what's coming out of his mouth. Spontaneously, instantly, just out of his gut like that. And they are stunned. And then the teacher looks at him straight in the eye. When everybody realizes the riches that this person had inside and it never said because they were always too scared, too silent, says, don't you ever forget it. That moment when they discovered the abilities they had. That's what I would say to you. Don't you ever forget what you've written, because you've got it. Now, the only wrong question is the unasked question, and our time will go very fast today, folks. Who would like to ask a question? You've got the writer here.
I have a question.
Yes, come here, Ms. Rattlesnake.
Sorry, I'm getting restless.
Okay, that's fine.
I have a question for you. I read poetry too, and I realized that at first I started writing it because I liked it. Like the way it sounds and the way it's worded and the way you make the reader and yourself feel. But has that ever, and then I started writing about like it's like has ever happened to you, like you're trying to find the right words to say